More about how do we create an environment in which people will be willing to co-create the future with you, with us as leaders. And co-creation is a different mindset than followership.
Welcome to API Futures, a podcast by Ascend where we empower global leaders of tomorrow. Here's our guest host for this episode.
We'd like to invite one of our very special honorees, Faculty Chair of Leadership Initiative at Harvard Business School, co-founder of Paradox Strategies. She has spent her career helping organizations build the capacity for continuous innovation. We're talking about Linda Hill, professor at Harvard Business School, for a timely and insightful fireside chat with myself, Linda. Linda, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
My pleasure.
Just an intimate conversation with 500 people as we all try to understand how the role of a leader has been redefined by AI, something that I'm sure all of us are thinking about on a regular basis. From your vantage point, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think what we all know is that really when we're trying to embrace new technologies as we are now, and we feel pretty overwhelmed, we need leaders that understand that leadership is always about building an emotional connection. And you must ask yourself, how do people experience you and how do they experience themselves? There's a lot of excitement about AI. There's a lot of fear about AI. So what I would say we see leaders having to do is really think about tech change is not about the technology. It's about the people, and have you built a culture that will encourage people to experiment with something that is a little frightening in some ways and learn together how to use it. And I think that it's not easy to build an organization where people feel comfortable experimenting and learning, because by definition, when you learn that way, there's going to be a misstep or two, there's going to be a failure. And so how we as leaders handle those missteps and failures, we either tell people, keep it up, you're going on the right track, or we will discourage them from trying to embrace something that we all need them to embrace, because technology marches forward.
It's scary, I imagine, to embrace AI, but also knowing it could lead to a structural change in the workforce and the company that you're leading. How do you do both? Embrace the technology, but also instill confidence in the people you work with?
Well, we've been doing work on digital transformation for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 years. And one of the things we finally realized is we need to stop talking about it as digital transformation, as if it's one and done. Really, what we need to understand is we need to build a culture where people will really understand that they need to be what we refer to as digitally dexterous. I don't know, it's a little bit those two DD, the DD part of it. And so how do we, again, get people in our workforce to go with us on a journey that we actually don't know what the destination is going to be? No one really knows how our work will change. No one really knows what the workforce will look like. And one of the things we talk about in our latest book is something we call wayfinding. So wayfinding is about the fact that we don't know the destination, nonetheless how to get there. It's kind of like the explorers who, left Spain to go see if there was a new world, or if it was flat, etc. And we don't really know what's out there. And I think we're very used to what we refer to as pathfinding leadership. Leadership where we actually do know the destination. Still hard to figure out how we're going to get there, but we kind of have a sense of it. So too often we think about leadership as being the visionary, being the one who has an answer. And again, how do we get people to follow us to that future? But when you're dealing with the new technologies and you're dealing with innovation, it's not so much about followership. It's more about how do we create an environment in which people will be willing to co-create the future with you, with us as leaders. And co-creation is a different mindset than followership. And it's a particularly difficult one for people who are usually really good at what they do, who are smart and have lots of answers. And so making the space for other people to co-create with you, as opposed to you sort of fundamentally saying, we're going this way, we're going to go that, is not easy. It requires a transformation in their own mindset and their own behavior as leaders.
Fascinating. It isn't easy. And in your latest book, Genius at Scale, you were able to profile a number of different leaders, Ajay Banga, as well as someone in the audience, Michael Koo, who's an honoree of Pfizer. You defined him as a deep and strategic architect. Let's put him on the spotlight. What did you find? The good, the
Oh,
bad?
should I cold call him? No, I must say I actually have 5 students in the room, and it's a blessing to be with them, because what you know as a professor, if you're a good professor, you learn more from the people you teach than the people you teach learn from you. So, and I found out that Ajay, who I get to call Ajay Banga, is the first chapter of our new book, and Michael is the second chapter of our new book. And I have to say, I know how to pick them, just like Asin does, I guess, although I don't know how I got to be a part of the party. So what those leaders have helped us understand is, you know what, it is really hard to get this right. And Ajay, who, and forgive me for calling him Ajay, but when I'm an anthropologist, so I spend lots of time with the leaders that I study, observing them, etc. And, he's now the head of the World Bank, so I sit up even straighter. But when he went to MasterCard, the first thing he sort of realized with the board is we are facing an existential crisis. If we don't figure out how to transform how we do business, move from being basically a credit card company to a tech company in the payment space, none of us will have work. None of us will have jobs. But where did he start? He started with purpose. He said, you know what? We're about financial inclusion, making sure that everybody can participate in the financial system so that they can build the lives and the livelihoods that they'd like to live. So he's a real example of, you start with purpose. If you don't make the work meaningful, people aren't going to want to do that extra that they're going to have to do to not just survive, but to thrive.
Looking at.
But you want me to say something about Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what can we say about Michael? Only good things. And also Faye is here, and other people who I got to study. We actually wrote a case about 2 people. Faye Wooding is over there. I'm going to embarrass you, Faye. Yep, another person. So one of the things that they really worked on is they really thought about. So Michael, I'm going to say this. I have deep respect for the Pfizer team. Michael was hired to do a digital transformation of the global clinical supply group. And he very quickly realized that it wasn't, again, about the technology. It was about building a sense of community. And so he also started with purpose, hope. How can we bring hope to people? Developed a narrative around hope that really included digital tools and data, because the faster we can bring hope, then the better off those people will be. They'll be healthy. They'll be able to live the lives they want to live. So they started there, and they all worked to learn how to co-create. And there are 3 parts to it. Again, collaborate, experiment, and learn. And there was a term they really hated, and that term was develop the muscle of creative abrasion. You rarely get innovation without diversity of thought. And when you have diversity of thought, you get conflict. And so you have to develop the muscle of creating a marketplace of ideas through debate and discords where you really embrace that conflict. And as Michael's team told me, they're very nice and polite people. So they don't really like to make people feel bad. And this is the one. And so they worked on all of it. They practiced all of it. And the last thing I want to say about this, and it's with the deepest respect, is that what I love about their story, and it really is a collective story, but I am going to pull Michael out. Michael and his team, if they had not made the decision to change their culture and help them all learn to be innovators, because in some ways, at companies like Pfizer, often the scientists are the innovators, the technologists are the innovators, not the people who do packaging or supply. If they hadn't made that decision, as The Economist says, millions of people would have died. Millions of people would have died because they ran those COVID trials in 266 days. So I want to say the act of leadership makes a difference.
It's fascinating. You talked about the role of science and innovation. What about the impact of Washington changing policies at machine speed? And it's certainly changing the way CEOs have to respond real time. What is your advice to executives right now?
I don't exactly know what advice to give executives, and I'm not avoiding the question. These are very uncertain times, and if there's one thing business hates, maybe not the people in finance, because you can get the weak signal and be first, you can make a little money. But I think that uncertainty is hard for all of us and very hard for leaders to figure out. So even if you know what the bad policy is going to be, you know how to set yourself up and react to that. But when you're not sure what the policy is going to be one way or the other, I think it's extremely difficult for leaders. So again, I think what I would say is, one is, if the leader, if the CEO and the C-suite is feeling confused, you can believe the people on the ground are feeling confused, and you've got to address that. So I remember one CEO who I studied, also of Asian descent. I guess he's chapter 4 in the book. He said to his, this is a man who's a Rhodes Scholar, a pioneer in robotic cardiac surgery. He said to me one day, Linda, I feel like I'm leading through a fog. What does it mean to lead when you can't see, when you have no vision? This was extremely overwhelming for him. How do I lead these people when I can't see and I have no vision? And he said, you know what? I've got to teach them all that there is nothing called business as usual. And I'm going to help, and he didn't say it quite this way, but I'm going to help them learn the sort of understand that everything we do in life right now is a working hypothesis. It's a hypothesis. And until we try it and get the feedback from that decision or that action we took, we won't know whether we're going the right way or not. So he said to his team, I'm scared. He said, I'm scared, but I trust you. And I know together we are going to work this out. Not used to hearing CEOs, particularly a physician, a Rhodes Scholar, a man sitting in Abu Dhabi, fairly hierarchical society, saying to people, I'm scared, but I trust you, and I know we're going to work this out.
You talk about in your book the rise of these movement leaders. I was wondering if you could sort of unpack what you mean by that and why it's important for CEOs to lean into that.
So we talk about, in Collective Genius, we talk about the ABCs of leading innovation: the architect, the bridger, and the catalyst. The catalysts are the leaders who know how to really drive movements, to put together coalitions of stakeholders to drive movements across a whole sector or an industry or whatever, or a geography. And those leaders understand really how to exercise influence when you don't have formal authority, and how to get these coalitions of often diverse parties who need to work together to get something done. So we see it, for instance, with the electric vehicles. The CEO of Renault at the time wrote an article, and he wrote a letter to the EU. And in the letter he said, doesn't matter, electric vehicles are not going to sell unless we can work with government to have enough charging stations. We can work with government to upskill people so they know how to make software kinds of vehicles and electric vehicles. So if I just try to do it alone as one company, most perfect car in the world, if I don't have arrangements with government, with the not the civil society to take care of some of the kinds of issues that are going to come up, it's not going to happen. We're not going to be competitive. So you see these leaders who really think about almost driving social movements to create the support that you need as a business person to be successful. And I think we're seeing competitors in Dubai, if you will, come together and cooperate appropriately, not breaking any antitrust or whatever. They've come together to cooperate so that they can figure out how they're going to work their way through what's happening right now, because nobody can do it alone. So I think we're going to find more of these kinds of these movements of unusual suspects collaborating to get things done.
Speaking of electric vehicles, what's your hot take on Elon Musk?
You know what? And my students will tell you this. I don't actually talk about leaders I haven't studied myself.
Just like, based on what's out there.
I don't do it, which is why I often get called, to be on television thing. I'm a terrible person to have on television because I won't talk about people I don't know. And I honestly won't. So I'm very consistent.
President Trump?
I'm very consistent. And about that, I don't. I have not had the pleasure of spending lots of time with him. But what I would say is that I do think political leadership works a little differently than business leadership, and I have not studied political leadership. So I have been very consistent, and I will continue to be. So only if I've spent some time with you and have some sense of you do I comment about you?
Fair. Had to ask.
Okay.
Um, do you recommend CEOs to have a larger social media presence? Because it seems like
Social media
there's-
presence?
Yeah, they're being emboldened to have a bigger voice
Yeah.
on public platforms. How do they navigate that?
No, I think one of the things we have an article that we're waiting to see if we can get it published on how to work across generations. So my last two books I have written always with a young person. And because I'm old now, as they always tell me, so they tell me politely. So my co-authors are Gen Zs right now and working. So we're doing all of this research around the world on how do the generations work together. And one of the things is if you want to speak to the younger generation, they do look at social media. Apparently I have TikToks. Okay, I didn't do them really, and they're making me, I don't have to learn to vibe code anymore because you don't need it, but they were teaching me that. But I do think that you have to figure out the different ways you can communicate. I was talking to a CEO in Tunisia who said that she does communicate by TikTok because that's where they look for they look for information there. So she really does her communications in 3 or 4 different ways because she has different generations in her workforce.
Yeah, go where the people are.
Go where the people are. I think so. But do it. Try to do it responsibly, right?
Linda Hill, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
insights and wisdom. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to API Futures, where we empower global leaders of tomorrow. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube.